when did you start the company, and what was the goal of starting this company? And then even taking us back, what did you do at LinkedIn?
Well, the company's about 4.5 years old. The team came from LinkedIn, and we actually created an open source project there internally.
Great.
And so you were saying we kind of started as engineers, but I guess for these open source projects, you're kind of the product and the marketing and the engineer all in one.
Yeah, explain that with open source. How does an open source project work for somebody who's heard the word open source but doesn't understand how an open source project is called a project as opposed to a company, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of a methodology for making software where people just contribute bits and it's done out in the open, and you can kind of see how it works and pick apart the bits of it. And it kind of became pretty mainstream in a lot of these big tech companies. So a lot of the internal infrastructure at LinkedIn was built that way.
And this is Apache.
Yeah. So the system we built is called Apache Kafka.
Right, because Apache is the web server that everybody knows.
Apache is a web server and then a whole foundation for these open source projects.
Right.
And so they kind of help, govern these communities that contribute to them.
Got it. Stupid question, but for people who don't know, who decides what goes into the software? If there's 20 people contributing to this open source project you created at LinkedIn, who gets to decide if LinkedIn and Microsoft and Google are all contributing to it, and somebody says, I don't want to add that, and Microsoft's like, no, you have to add it? How does that resolve?
It's one of the fascinating things about these open source projects. The first thing they have to do is pick a governance model. It's like picking your constitution or something. Is it going to be democracy? Is it going to be dictatorship?
Right. Benevolent dictatorship.
Yeah, the Apache projects are kind of a, it's sort of representative democracy where there's some set of people who are kind of going through and approving all the changes and helping set direction.
Got it. And is it the first people who sign up are the most important?
It's
your
based,
project?
Yeah, it's based on contribution. So people who come and contribute and stick around do it. And so that works pretty well. That kind of incentivizes people to try and do something useful.
So you were making this Apache, what was the name of the project?
Kafka. Yeah, like the writer.
Like the writer.
Yeah.
Was he a surrealist or?
Yeah.
Kind of, and you picked that, Kafka?
Yeah.
You're a fan?
Yeah, a little bit. We had a for these internal projects, they always have goofy names. So we had Harry Potter characters. We had a database named Voldemort for a while.
Yeah.
And then we switched to writers.
So what was this project, Kafka, that you built at in the Apache framework? What was the goal of that at LinkedIn?
Yeah, the transition LinkedIn was going through was, kind of moving off, running big Oracle databases and then moving to this world of like big distributed systems that have data all around the world and kind of scale on bunches of servers. And so, we were doing a bunch of things to try and make that transition. And one of the things we thought you needed was something that would work off of streams of data. And so we thought you could think of all the clicks on a social network and all the updates to people's profiles and all the emails. You could see that as some stream of changes, and you could build all kinds of things around that. And so we built, a system that did that, and we spent about 5 years, turning that into something that kind of scales around the world with trillions of events flowing through it in real time. And then as that was open sourced, it got really popular, mostly just in Silicon Valley. So all the Ubers and Pinterests and Airbnbs all chose this architecture that was kind of built around these real-time streams.
And so a way for somebody to think about this is, hey, it used to be you have a database of, say, books at Amazon, every book ever made, and every day they put 500 new books in.
Yeah.
But when you start thinking about tracking real-time data, say on Twitter, you might have somebody who uses Twitter every day, like, comment, retweet, and tweet 500 times a day themselves.
Yeah.
And then you might have 10 million of those people doing it all day long, or 100 million, and now you've got 5 billion or 50 billion behaviors, moments being added to a database.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So like in some sense, traditional databases, you would hear the phrase data warehousing, and it's kind of like in Indiana Jones, that big warehouse.
Yeah, sure, where the Ark of the Covenant is. And...
yeah, it's all full of data, and you might go ask it some question, but the answer is out of date by the time you get it.
Right.
But for for these much more real time consumer sites, that kind of doesn't cut it. You're not like producing updates for your users at the end of the day. You're doing something continuously, and so it does work much more like Twitter, where there's some feed of all the changes that are kind of flying at you, and you kind of process it as it occurs.
And this required a different database architecture than the one that came before it. Explain the paradigms of these databases. And we all hear about Oracle. They've built this ginormous, $1 trillion business or whatever it is in terms of revenue over the last decade around the concept of these, huge databases. But the open source systems came in and challenged them or replaced them or evolved them? How do we look at it versus what people used to do?
I think there's like a huge transition happening right now where, there was traditional databases like Oracle. With the emergence of these kind of consumer tech startups, you had people that were like using data in a completely different way, and they kind of built their own databases, which was what LinkedIn was doing and Facebook was doing and Google was doing.
Why did they make their own? Was it a function of what?
It's a bunch of things. Like one, the whole company is kind of built in software in a way that was pretty niche, maybe 20 years ago, and is now becoming very mainstream, and all kinds, everything from grocery stores to car companies would think about themselves that way. So they just had a lot more data. It was much more deeply intertwined with how they served customers. And then the scale is a lot larger. There's just a lot more data about more things. And
did it also have to do with the arduous nature of maybe getting through the Oracle sales process to buy and spend $1 million on a license to build a database when you're doing some social network that has tons of data, but maybe you have no revenue yet?
Yeah, maybe that's part of it. But I think a lot of the big change came not from that, because they were able to hold on to that for a long time. And what's actually kind of chipped away at it has been these totally different ways, totally different requirements, totally different product, something that runs across a fleet of servers in the cloud. It's just built completely differently for different use cases. And so of course then people like these open source software components. They love these cloud services where you can just buy what you need and pay for what you use, and you're not locked in forever. And so that's been a huge part of it. But I think without this kind of change in how people think about data, I don't think you would have gotten in there with just a better sales model.
And so you have this open source project that everybody's benefiting from, and then you decide Confluent will become a for-profit company that provides what around this open source project?
Yeah, we were looking at what was happening. We thought, look, we have huge adoption. Basically in a 50-mile radius of where we are. Like all the Silicon Valley tech companies are using this. Everybody else is interested, but like they need something that's much more of a product and plugs into all the systems they have.
Got it.
They want something that can be like a cloud service, or that can be, easy to manage in their data centers. They don't adopt technology the same way that the kind of tech companies do.
Right.
And so we thought, look, if we really want to make this something real, we got to really turn it into a real product and take it out into the world.
Right. And
so that's what we do. So we provide a version of this that's, secure, that scales elastically, that you can run across data centers. And then we, help companies actually get that going and run it. And then we offer it as a service in the cloud. So you can just kind of, pay for what you use and get it without having to do any of the work yourself.